There's no doubt that Peta V'landys is arguably the most outstanding sporting administrator in this country, in my view anyway. He wears two hats. He's the head of the National Rugby League and he's the head of New South Wales Racing. The richest two-year-old race in the world, the Golden Slipper, will be run on Saturday at Rosehill. No one is allowed in, not even the owners. In a couple of weeks' time, the richest race in the world will be run, the Everest. No one's allowed in. Rugby League will be playing in empty stadia. And the argument by V'landys' critics is, well, who cares about Rugby League? They're all highly paid. Racing is the pastime of millionaires. Such comments do a disservice to why Peta V'landys is speaking out. And in fact, Peta and I are in his camp, battling for the forgotten worker. V'landys makes no apologies in asking the government for money in compensation. In terms of racing, he argues simply that thousands of battlers, truck drivers, the bloke who sells the fuel to the truck driver, the bloke who makes and sells the pies on a massive race day like the Golden Slipper, the bloke who sells the eggs and the lettuce for the sandwiches, the gate attendants, the security, those who clean up, hundreds of casuals, those jobs are gone. Rugby League's the same. Catering staff, cleaners, security guards, forget racing and rugby league. These decisions are having a massive impact on battlers who have no voice. Cameron Smith, the Australian Rugby League captain, says shut the game down until it's over. The battlers we're talking about go out the back door if any of these events are completely shut down. The Australian Opera, the big musicals, the theatre, ended. A violinist wrote to me today, the musical she's been in, a hit musical, full houses booked out, it's been shut down. All her gigs have been cancelled. Then, of course, you've got the broadcasters in racing and rugby league. How many people who pay tax work for them? And who are the suppliers? This has got nothing to do, in a way, with rugby league or racing, but it's tied up with people whose livelihoods are now jeopardised in sport, in business, in retail, in the arts. As people are told, if you don't come to work, there's no work. Peta V'landys is one bloke who sticks his head up. He joins us. We can only grab him on the phone. But good evening to you, Peta.
Good evening, Alan. Peter.
G'day.
And Peta, just explain to our viewers what is the rationale for you speaking out?
Look, the rationale is the government's going to provide a $17 billion economic stimulus. You can't forget sport is an industry and a business. Rugby League employs tens of thousands of people, directly and indirectly. There's a lot of industries that rely on the game being played for them to earn their revenues. So this is an investment by government in our game, because if our game goes under, we won't be able to pay millions and millions of dollars of tax in the future. So if you want an economic multiplier through the whole economy, you do it with a sport like Rugby League, because we're everywhere in New South Wales, we're everywhere in Queensland. So there's tens of thousands of people, from your catering staff to your airline staff, to bus drivers, and the list just goes on and on and on. All we're asking is, when the government considers that economic stimulus, don't forget the sports. Don't forget the ones that provide the entertainment, and especially when our spirits needs to be lifted. It's right now. And, unfortunately, all sports are going to be in the worst crisis they've ever been in, because from circumstances beyond their control, their whole financial model is crumbling. And, if we can't broadcast our events and we can't have people out at the events, it's going to cause enormous hardship financially, not just for rugby league, but for all sport. So that's what we're asking, Alan.
Peta.
Yeah, can I just jump in there? Because I put myself through uni working as a waitress at the footy at the MCG, and those periodic, it was all casual work, so I understand how important casual labour is. And Peta, you and I knew each other many years ago in the racing industry, and that lives off casual workers. The real challenge, isn't it, is grassroots games are affected, international level, high-class games, elite sport is affected, and then this enormous casual workforce is affected. How, when you are talking to government, how are you asking them to manage through these issues?
Look, we're just saying we don't want a handout or compensation. We just want to be part of the economic stimulus that's going to be provided. I think people have to understand that sport is vital to our fabric of society. We've gone through depressions, we've gone through wars, and sports is what's lifted us. There is a chance that some of these sports you may never see again in this crisis, unless the government can provide them some funding to continue on, and then they'll get that money back in the future. When equine influenza hit, When equine influenza hit, we got $235 million from government to keep us going at that time. Well, we've probably paid that back 10 times since then through the economic stimulus of the racing industry and through all the taxes that have been paid. What we're saying here is if you want a long-term investment, help us now, provide some stimulus now, and we will repay it back in taxes into the future.
Yeah, that's right. See, Peter, it's not just racing, though. I was just looking today, the opera, that the theatres are closed. I mean, and this is happening here and in Europe. The whole of Broadway shut down. The Comedy Festival, you take Vivid, the number of casual people that are employed, the Royal Easter Show, the Writers' Festival, the Biennale. Professor Warren Hogan, and you and I, Peter, in relation to drought, talked about a HEX scheme for farmers, drought-stricken farmers. In other words, advance the money as you do to students. Advance the money as you do to students. 60-odd billion has been advanced to students so that they can go to university and they'll pay the money back when they get to $45,000 in income after they graduate. Now, Professor Warren Hogan is saying, well, perhaps business should have a HEX scheme. Now, we raised that in relation to drought. Peter V'landys, what do you think about that? That would be, you know, advance the dough. When the time comes down the track that you can afford to pay it back, then you can pay it back.
Absolutely, and you can credit it off the taxes that you receive. And look, it's not just for sport, as you correctly point out, it's for the arts, it's for airlines. You know, the whole economy is going to hurt, and the government's got to stand up with the stimulus and provide that economic multiplier through all industries, not just one or two, or providing it to people that are going to spend it on certain items. I think they've got to do a much more detailed analysis of how they can stimulate the whole of the economy through all areas, not just paying people that are on welfare, etc.
Peter, let's hear from you here because you're... Yeah, I just could say to you, Peter Credlin, because you've been in government very recently, I see some people talking about a stimulus package of $60 billion, which is 5 times or 4 times what has already been provided. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I have a different view, I think, than people talking about a second stimulus. I support the first stimulus, which is money into the pockets of would-be consumers. But I think what comes second now isn't so much a stimulus, because I don't think much stimulatory action, i.e. getting people to spend, is going to have impact at the moment at the same time as we're telling them to stay home and keep safe. I think what's needed now is a second package of maintenance measures, like a life raft, really, a life raft for retail businesses, for restaurants, for bars, in this case sporting clubs and others, to keep them afloat until such time as we're past the worst of this and the consumer is out there spending again. Because if you put $40, $50 million out there for consumers, I'm not confident, and certainly we don't want older Australians out there spending. It's a life raft. It's a ventilator, just like we're going to need ventilators for people who are sick in hospital. This is a ventilator for our economic.
No, it's spot on, Peter. No, it's exactly. Peter's 100% correct. You know, give it to the consumers first and to the ones that are the most needy in our community, no problem with that. But now give it to the industries that pay the taxes, that pay that can have that, pay the welfare, etc. You've got to keep these industries going. These are the industries that generate the taxes and generate the revenues that the government can spend on social items.
Yeah, otherwise we won't have the jobs.
Prime Minister has said, that's it. The Prime Minister said 3 things, hasn't he, through all this? We've got to secure the health of all Australians. We've got to keep business in business, and we've got keep people in jobs, in the jobs that they're currently in. Now you've got to be true to your word. Pretty simple, isn't it?
It's very simple, and I just wish Peter was still in government, because he's definitely got the solution.
Yeah, all right. Good to talk to you, Peter V'landys.